Hello, everybody. Man, I'm starting this video out with just to talk to you for a second here. It's about the meeting with Zelensky. You know, we just had that meeting with Putin in Alaska. President Trump had a meeting with Putin in Alaska, representing us, the people, U.S. citizens, and now you're having a meeting with Zelensky. Man, I'm just looking at this beginning of this. I just want to start off. I watched it earlier. I just want to say, this guy, this President Zelensky, is still like talking to the media. You know, now we see a table that's set with more of the European counterparts that's really supporting this efforts for Zelensky, for Ukraine. You can see their interest in more in Ukraine. Um, but if you watch their own take, you see them more looking at talking to the president. They're not really focused on the media, but you see the President Zelensky is again talking to president, barely talking to the president, and focus on the media more. Actually pulls his chair out, turns around, angles his body towards the media. It's like he's still doing the same character behavior, as far as he's more focused on the media and what the media would say. When you're dealing with the President Trump, you can tell President Trump don't care about the media. So look at all the other diplomats from other countries, European nations. They're focused on talking to the president. They're stating their points and their references and what they feel and what they're seeing. They're seeing the progress that the president makes. They're making these statements, and they're talking directly to the president. But as soon as Zelensky gets his moment to speak, President Zelensky, a Ukrainian president, we're gonna say, he speaks a couple seconds, then he turns, he pulls the seats out. Watch it again, guys. He pulls the seats and turns towards the media. You know, it's a point when it's like, dude, you're still showing the same similar signs as previous. I hope there's a change. I hope there's peace, because most Americans, we're tired of seeing people die, hearing about people dying in Ukraine and in Russia. We don't want to see this type of death. But you seem to be still doing the same clip over and over again, repeating. And I noticed that in this reaction video I'm doing of this news clip. I noticed he doing the same thing, but I'm seeing a difference between the other European diplomats. They're doing something totally different. They're engaging with the President of the United States. They're stating their points. They're looking at the positive and the negatives of outcome. They're focused on what's happened right before him at this meeting. And immediately, go back and watch it. Immediately you see Zelensky turn sideways. He's more focused on the media, getting his view across, and also with the president. So that's like a back door. You know, I don't want to say that, but what is your opinion on that? Leave a comment below. Let me know before we start this video. Just pay attention to this video and watch what he does.
Since the end of the Cold War, the White House has not witnessed such a gathering of European leaders.
Hello, everybody.
They pose for a photograph, knowing that their discussions will shape Europe's security and Ukraine's very viability. In the East Room, there was an extraordinary glimpse into high-stakes diplomacy in real time.
We're all working for the same goal, very simple goal. We want to stop the killing.
As Trump explained, the US would now provide support to a European stabilizing force if a peace...
Now watch this, guys. The president is talking to the table. He's looking at the other constituents. These European, as you say, this is a high-stake table since the Cold War. This news reporter stated. So look at the power at this table. Look at the body language. And these power, you got England, you got other countries, other nations. I can't read them all. But you got all these nations, and they're attentive. Look at the one to the right of Trump, paying attention to him. People getting situated. They're very alert. They're very present in this meeting, this high-level diplomacy meeting. Now watch the next 2 minutes. Watch the behaviors from here and on.
Deal emerges.
In a very significant step, President Putin agreed that Russia would accept security guarantees for Ukraine, and this is one of the key points that we need to consider. I think that the European nations are going to take a lot of the burden. We're going to help them, and we're going to make it very secure. We also need to discuss the possible exchanges of territory, taking into consideration the current line of contact. That means the war zone, the war lines. We're going to try and get a three-party meeting, maybe as soon as we can. And I have a feeling you and President Putin are going to work something out.
Behind the scenes, Trump and Zelensky discussed some of the most sensitive issues in front of a map of Ukraine. And Zelensky, treading with immense care, said these new US security guarantees are a significant advance.
All of us want to finish this war, stop Russia and stop this war. We spoke about it, and we will speak more about security guarantees. This is very important that you know.
See, when he's supposed to be talking directly to the president, say he turned his chair around, made the other constituents on his side turn kind of to see attention, they recognize he's looking at the media again. Look at the gentleman right across from President Rice. Look how he's feeling like, man, you're doing it again. Look at his expression. He has his hands over his. He's like, man, you're doing it again, Zelensky. And they actually, some of the other people turned their chair back around. They turned it and they turned it back to find out, see what he was doing. Then he leans back to the president and he turns back to the president. His body language and his communication. Who are you talking to? Is this for people at the table or is this for the media? Once again, we're here again with. So I'm saying, pay attention to his behavior, his mannerism. And I'm kind of doubtful. He looked like he wants more media attention than what's happening at the table. But just pay attention.
The United States gives such strong signal and is ready for security guarantees.
I think you'll see that President Putin really would like to do something else. I think when we set that up, when we do, I think it's going to be when, not if. I think you're going to see some really positive moves.
Europe's leaders blended praise for Trump's role with pleas for an immediate end to the fighting while negotiations continue.
The next steps ahead are the more complicated ones now. The path is open. You opened it last Friday. But now the way is open for complicated negotiations. And to be honest, we all would like to see a ceasefire.
So you can count on us as we can count on you in order to deliver this robust peace for both Ukraine and Europe.
And your indication of security guarantees, of some sort of Article 5 style guarantees, fits with what we've been doing with the Coalition of the Willing, which we started some months ago, bringing countries together and showing that we were prepared to step up to the plate when it came to security, with you coming alongside, the US alongside what we've already developed. I think we could take a really important step forward today, a historic step, actually.
If you're anywhere here in Washington...
See, this is what I'm talking about. You know, this situation would.
But amid all of this talk,
this situation with President Trump and this table with high player, we had Germany and France. If you notice their body language, they're focused on the conversation at hand, the task at hand, the peace, trying to meet a peace treaty. They're not looking at the cameras. They're not looking at the media. They're focused to the leaders that they're sitting at. But if you notice behavior of Zelensky, he's keep turning sideways. They're no longer focused on the cameras. They're focused on what's at hand. He studied focus on the camera and what he say to the media instead of focus on the president. He'll say a few words and then he'll turn back to the camera. Just watch his behavior. We'll get back to this video.
fighting in eastern Ukraine continues. Overnight, Russia firing rockets at Ukrainian positions.
Look at the buildings, man. Rockets.
And launching drones that struck apartment buildings with multiple fatalities. Amid such scenes, if Ukraine is to surrender land to the Russian invaders, it will be a moment of enormous national anguish. What remains unknown is whether Trump accurately read President Putin's motives and intentions when they met at that US airbase in Alaska. Is Russia prepared to make significant compromises? Or is Putin sticking to his maximalist demands, including seizing the entire Donbass region? But back in Washington, there is now the sense that the contours of a peace deal are at least visible.
I think in the past 2 weeks, we've probably had more progress in ending this war than we have in the past 3.5 years. And I think the fact that we're around this table today is very much symbolic in the sense that it's Team Europe and Team United States helping Ukraine.
Towards the end, Trump, probably to the astonishment of others around the table, said he thought that Putin was also invested in a deal that would end the war.
I really do believe, I've known him for a long time. I've always had a great relationship with him. I think that President Putin wants to find an answer too. And we'll see. And in a certain period of time, not very far from now, a week or 2 weeks, we're going to know whether or not we're going to solve this, or is this horrible fighting going to continue. We'll do our best to get it ended. Thank you very much for being here.
This has been an astonishing day of diplomacy in Washington.
I love the Ukrainian people, but I love all people. I love the Russian people. I love them all.
Thankfully, there was no ambush like we witnessed in the Oval Office 6 months ago. Indeed, this time Zelensky was wearing a jacket, not military-style clothing like last time, leading to this good-natured exchange.
First of all, Mr. President Zelensky, you look fabulous in that suit.
I said the same thing.
Yeah, you look good.
I said the same thing.
Yeah, looks good on
I
you.
said the one that attacked you last time. See, now he's I remember that.
Yeah, I apologize to you. You look wonderful. No, my first question for you, President Zelensky.
In the same suit. You see, I changed you.
But beyond this humour, many will worry that Russia is being rewarded for aggression. And others will ask whether the winner today is watching these scenes smiling from inside the Kremlin. Robert Moore, News at...
I don't think Russia is winning. I don't think Russia is getting a better deal. As we know, Russia's the greater power. It's as the President said, the second largest nuclear warhead nation. It's not a joke, you know. So Ukraine is not powerful. Come on, let's be honest. When you're looking at both sides of the map, one has more power. One has the stability in that region. If you didn't have no support from European nations, you will be. We must admit, Ukraine will be been wiped out by now. But they get support from other nations. That's President Zelensky of Ukraine. So, yes, quite naturally, the leaning will be to the more powerful one. That's just nature. You know, that's my opinion, but what is your opinion? Leave a comment below.
10, Washington.
Dan is outside the White House now. Dan, President Trump has obviously just spoken to President Putin and appears to have gone back to European leaders. Have we got any sense of what that call was about? And can I ask you more broadly? Obviously, you report from Washington now, but you know the front line of Ukraine pretty well. You've reported on there from the start of the war and often since. Do you think there is a, whatever you want to call it, a land deal that can be done on the ground that President Putin's and Zelensky could both accept, or is that a stretch in your view?
Well, firstly, on the call to Putin, I mean, the White House are neither confirming nor denying the call took place, but it's been reported by a German newspaper that it did take place, that President Trump broke off talks with the European leaders to call Vladimir Putin. Would have been almost midnight in Moscow. We don't know the contents of that call or how it went. It might be significant that although the meeting, we're told, has finished with the European leaders, they are still inside the White House, and some suggestion that the discussions are carrying on in a different format. So that might give rise to speculation. Perhaps there's some fruitful discussions going on, that they're getting down to the nitty-gritty. In terms of the territory, I think one of the kind of problems is the bit of the Donbass that Ukraine still controls has some very strategically important towns in it, like Kramatorsk and Sloviansk, which are kind of fortresses, military hubs which I think Ukraine would be very keen to hang on to because they're really all that stands between the Russian forces to their east and hundreds of miles of open agricultural land. So I think that's potentially going to be a sticking point. But I think also Zelensky potentially has come out of this quite well, avoiding the trap that was set by President Putin. He said in Alaska to Donald Trump that he'd be willing to take all of the Donbass in return for allowing some security guarantees for Ukraine, knowing that was a red line really for Zelensky. Zelensky hasn't risen to the bait, as it were, here. I think he wanted to avoid, and the European leaders wanted to avoid, Zelensky being seen as a kind of roadblock to peace. And I think so far he's successfully pulled that off. None of the fireworks that we saw in February, warm handshakes all around. So far from President Zelensky's point of view, this has gone fairly well.
I don't know about that. If you really look at the nonverbal communication of President Zelensky, he showed a lot of behavior the same as previously, in my opinion. He immediately turned his seat to sideways to talk to the media, so that hasn't left. His communication with President Trump was very limited, and it would seem like the European Council, France, Finland, Germany had more of the conversation to say about what's happening in the meeting versus Zelensky, and he's the nation that's in war. So his alliances are there speaking more on behavior. But I don't know about his position. His position is still kind of neutral. I think he was just walking a red line, just trying to stay neutral, and still pretend to see what Putin's going to do with the United States as a consigliere or negotiator at the negotiating table here in the White House. So we'll see. But I don't sense, from what I noticed about Zelensky, I don't sense he's ready to give up land, territory, or significant territory. And I believe Putin wants that territory that definitely I don't think Zelensky wants to give up at all. So this is going to be the major drawback from this meeting. So without further ado, let's continue on.
Dan, thank you very much for now. And Rohit, our global security editor, is here. You've also reported very frequently from Ukraine and know the ground well. You know how important, how vulnerable Ukrainians feel still and would feel even after a peace deal. So security guarantees are critical. What do you make of where we've got to on that and the general tenor of today?
Well, I mean, the general tenor of today was obviously extremely positive, particularly compared to what happened in February when Volodymyr Zelensky was last in the Oval Office. You know, the European leaders, one by one, kind of unleashed this like avalanche of adulation for President Trump. But in it all, it could be missed that actually there's a lot of detail that was missing there. They talk about security guarantees, and actually one by one, the European leaders used this phrase of Article 5-like guarantees. Now, we know what Article 5 is. That's the clause in the NATO Charter, which says an attack against one is an attack against all. And much like after 9/11, it would require other NATO members to protect Ukraine if it were attacked. But what does Article 5-like mean? I think the European leaders were employing this sort of strategy of strategic vagueness. They were using a phrase that was used just yesterday on TV by Steve Witkoff, Donald Trump's envoy, who used this and offered very little detail. And so, yeah, they've managed to get him to agree to this without being clear on exactly what it is. But the Russians have already said this evening that they would reject any scenario which involved NATO contingents being inside Ukraine. And so perhaps we're now 2 steps back. And also sirens across eastern Ukraine tonight, reports of missile and drone launches. So perhaps 3 steps back.
I think, guys, this is a very interesting on take of President Trump and President Zelensky and President Putin. I don't think, since I just heard that statement, I don't think it's done yet. I think this is a first step towards the next level of movements inside this ceasefire peace treaty deal that's trying to be reached between Russia and Ukraine. The behavior nonverbal in this Article 5 that this gentleman just stated, I didn't really understand that. Every say, well, attack against one is attack against all, so Europe still want to be part of that. So I guess just got to decide which direction we're going to go in. Leave a comment below and let me know what you think.